Speaker is going to demonstrate is that TADs have a very, very firm place in the orthodontic profession today. And what I so enjoy about Skander's lecture is going to show us where to use them and where not to use them. I've had a great opportunity to become friends with the next speaker and have been nothing but impressed every single time I've had the opportunity to listen to him, and I'm sure everybody here in the next 90 minutes will share that same opinion. So without further complication, may I introduce from the wonderful country of Tunisia, Dr. Skander Ellouze. Skander, please.
Thank you very much, Alan. And thanks to all of you for being here today. It's a real pleasure for me to be here in California at this wonderful forum. With all what we've seen yesterday, I think that we all are going to have a big step forward in the next months. So today I will have the great pleasure to share with you my understanding of orthodontics and the way I like to treat my patients. I will talk about complex cases and optimal aesthetics. But there is something I want to start with. It's about lobsters. I think that you don't care really about lobsters, but let me tell you, it's very interesting. You know, the lobster, the soft lobsters, live inside a rigid shell that does not expand. And as they grow, that shell becomes very confining, and they feel uncomfortable under pressure. So they go under a rock to protect themselves from predatory fish. And they break that shell, and they create a new one, a larger one. And they might repeat that several times as they grow. So, for lobsters, times of stress are times to grow. And for orthodontics, I was thinking that this is also a quite complicated time. So many things are changing in our amazing profession. And if we don't do something, if we don't have the right answer, I think that we will be in trouble. I think that we need to think really about that. So for me, we have two big challenges. Number one is to rehabilitate the medical relevance of orthodontics. And I love what was said yesterday by Stuart Frost about creating airway-aware practices. And number two, I think that we need to treat more complex cases and to treat them to the highest treatment goals possible and achieve in every case an optimal aesthetic. And that's what I want to share with you today. It's 2005. I remember very well. Orthodontics was not very exciting at that time. We were extracting too often. We were referring patients to surgery too often. And because of the need of the patient's cooperation, the patient was the one who was deciding or not for the success of his treatment. And at that time, TADs were introduced, creating a shift, a tipping point in the history of orthodontics, with, for the very first time, the possibility for orthodontists to have a real control on what they were doing. Look at these images. I received these photos from a colleague who has attended an in-office program with us, and months back, he sent me these photos. He just wanted to understand how this could happen. You'd see it's really astounding. So the case looks relatively easy. It's not complicated. A little bit of vertical excess, a little bit slightly retruded chin, but nothing really difficult. Intraorally, not a severe crowding, just a little bit of class 2 on the right because of the loss of one first molar. You see the records here, the head film. So the colleague, the orthodontist, placed the Damon system, and for the class 2, he placed a forceps device. Why not? But look what happened 1 year later. It's a disaster. The case became surgical. It's a disaster for the patient, for her family, but also for the orthodontist. How to treat that now? So he just wanted to understand when he sent me his email why this happened and how it could happen. It's true that in this case, it's above all a lack of vertical control. The whole system has undergone a clockwise rotation with an extrusion of the upper incisors of the lower molars in a patient, it's true, who didn't have enough muscle forces, enough strength, and enough occlusion forces to resist to these effects. In a case like this, just placing one anterior mini screw in the upper and one posterior mini screw in the lower would have been enough to prevent, to take the control of this case. And what I would like to share most with you today is precisely that need for all of us to take the control of our cases. And it's also that specific thinking process when starting a new case, with or without that. This thinking process, you can have it on this slide, and please take a photo when the slide will be completed. Starting from clear diagnosis and clear treatment objectives. I first of all determine the needed tooth movement, the necessary tooth movements, including the movement that had been made possible by the use of skeletal anchorage or TADs or mini screw implants. And if TADs are necessary or if they allow a better treatment option, then I determine the best biomechanical protocol, and I deduce the ideal site of placement. This is how I do this reasoning, this biomechanical and this clinical reasoning before starting every case. And if we, in case of surgical infeasibility, I mean, if the ideal site of placement is not available, or because of a problem of bone density, or because of problem of thickness of soft tissues, or any other problem, then I will change to another site and I will adapt the biomechanics. The chronology of treatment phases also is deeply impacted by these treatment modalities, and we will come back to that a little bit later. But what we want to know now is that these treatment modalities allow us to shorten really dramatically the treatment time. And I will talk a little bit later also about one step or two steps when we need and when we don't need to reposition our mini screws. So this approach helps me and has been helping me now for 15 years to start every single treatment with much more serenity and to be able to give to every patient the best possible result, including very complex cases, including when things seem really impossible at the beginning. And what is nice also is that we can do it in a very easy to use way. 2 or 3 rapid examples before going into more details. Look at this patient, 63 years old. She had been rejected by 3 orthodontists before coming into my practice. And the problem of her life was her smile. She was highly motivated, and she wanted absolutely to have an orthodontic treatment. And what is fantastic with this approach is that you can each time look at the patient in the eyes and tell him, yes, we will make it, and in a much shorter time than you imagine. So what we will do here is very easy. We place a low force system after a comprehensive periodontal treatment, a Damon system in the upper and the lower, and 2 mini screws in the upper arch. This protocol will allow me to extract the upper 5 and the lower 4, even though we are in a class 1 malocclusion without worrying about anchorage. Look at the treatment. Only 14 months to come to the end of this case, including some aesthetic dentistry that we we make in our office for the patient when he asks for that. So 14 months only for this treatment, and this patient, I always remember that the day of debonding, she felt on the top of the world. She was so happy. She became one of our best friends. She sent us all her family and her friends. So really treatment like that, we change people's lives, but we change also our practice. Another challenge we often face in our practice is people who come with a very severe gummy smile, really related to a vertical excess, a skeletal vertical excess anteriorly and posteriorly. And people like that, we don't want to have surgery. It's complicated to find a way to treat them. And today, it's something really easy that we can achieve, all of us, and much more accurately than a surgeon can do. Just with mini screw implants and your orthodontic system, whatever is the system, look at the amount of intrusion that we can achieve, and without any risk for the patient and for the roots. And a last example here, those transverse scans of the smile line and of the occlusion plan that had been very challenging for us in the global arch mechanic for a long time. And that today we can really fix with sometimes only one mini screw with a very high accuracy. So, just a word about this book, Mini Screws, the Orthodontic of the Future, released in 2014 in the French version first. It encompasses all of the protocols that we will be talking about today and much more. The English version was made available just 1 year later, September 2015, with an editorial in the AG Audio the first year, and again 1 year later. And that editorial was very interesting because I liked it very much. The author highlighted really what was important in that book is how to master the biomechanics behind the use of tags, and I hope you will have it here in the US. I know it's available. So there are so many challenges, as I said in the beginning, in orthodontics. I could talk about severe class 2, severe class 3, about asymmetrical cases, or how to deal orthodontically with skeletal open bites. For this presentation, I prioritized 3 malocclusions, 3 challenges. How to treat without extractions and yet respect the bone, the perio, and the facial aesthetics. How to deal with complex cases and push the limits and always achieve an optimal aesthetic of the best possible result. And I will finish with some simplified protocols to manage impacted teeth. So let's go to the first topic, but just I wanted to ask in a room like that, is my English understandable for all of you? Yes? No problem. Thank you. So, I'm not a rigid fan of non-extraction treatments, and just like you, I think that there are clearly extraction cases and non-extraction cases, and that the problem is always in dealing with borderline cases, even if I confess I'm much happier when I don't extract. So in a case like that, I think that none of us here would go for extractions when you look at the profile. Whatever is the amount of crowding here, we are going to try to treat her without extractions, using all of the tools of the Damon mechanics, taking our time, progressing very slowly with the mechanic and with the wire sequence to let the system work with the biology. Look at the lateral development. We all know everything, all that. 20 months of treatment. So in a case like that, no need for any screw. Just stick to the protocol and respect your mechanical principles. Look at a beautiful broad smile and the enhanced facial profile also. with, I can say it here, a good enough control of the lower incisors. But things are not always simple in real life. We are not only treating class 1 malocclusions, easy cases, and when it comes to severe crowdings, how to do with that, how to go from this to this, how to go without extraction nor IPR. Do the power of the transverse always operate? How long time does it take? And most important for me, how to control the anterior teeth, how to control the incisors. So I don't know if you have or have had problems in dealing with proclination. I had problems, and I had to find a way to correct that, to imagine solutions, to treat without extractions when that was my decision, my choice, but never procline or expand to put the roots out of the bone. Because things like that can happen to anyone. This is the final outcome. The labial plates are not inviolable. I recommend you to go to the birth of Vingard and Bowers about the biotype and the phenotype when you make your diagnosis and when you start a case. We need to know, to bear in mind that if we don't have bone, we don't have orthodontics, it's impossible to treat. This is another example, I can show tons of them. These patients were in treatment in braces for 3 years. He had a low torque on the incisors, class 3 elastics, and look at the roots of the lower incisors. This is also a little disaster. So, to demonstrate that, to show you the way I treat these cases, I'm going to share with you the case of this patient. Shura is 22 years old. This case is part of one clinical study I have conducted in my office on 20 adult patients that had been treated in 2 phases with their consent. One first phase without mini screws and a second phase with mini screws. I wanted to see what happens. I was very cautious. I was following the patient every 3 weeks. The case looks easy, nice profile, nice facial features, the smile not too problematic. But intraorally we have a certain amount of crowding and a severe, very severe rotations of the lateral incisors of the canines. So, we have a tongue problem also that will be important in this treatment, in the evolution of the case. And slightly procline already in the beginning, the upper and lower incisors. 1/3 molar was missing, and we decided to treat this patient, of course, when you remember her face, without extractions, but to remove the 3rd molars prior to the treatment, prior to the bonding. And these are my treatment goals here. I want to treat her without extractions. I want to level and align. I want to reposition and upright slightly the incisors to have that beautiful final torque. I want to close the anterior bites and to improve the smile aesthetics, of course, and take in charge all the functional problems with the tongue posture. So we start here after the extraction of the 3 remaining 3rd molars with a Damon system with a very low torque, a super low torque on the upper incisors, but a standard torque on the lower incisors because the patient wanted absolutely to have clear braces, and that was the first mistake in this case. This is the initial wire, 013, upper and lower. We wanted really to be very gradual, very progressive. And look at the case 8 months later. Look at the proclination of upper and lower incisors. We wanted to align and level and to do, but things didn't happen that way. A very severe proclination, and as the patient was informed, now we are going to go to the phase 2 and place our mini screws. I knew, by reading all the literature and many articles, that also with passive self-ligating mechanism we can have severe proclination and almost the same amount of intercanine expansion than with conventional braces. So for the phase 2, I need to distalize the lower and the upper, the lower dentition via class 3 elastics supported by the mini screws and the upper arch, to distalise the upper dentition against my mini screws, and then to upright the upper and lower incisors and close the anterior bite. So for that, I will place 2 mini screws, only 2 mini screws. I will need a slight IPR in the lower 3 to 3 because of the Dalton discrepancies I had in the beginning, and I will, of course, start as soon as possible the tongue education. So for this treatment, to summarize what is important, the 3 coming slides are very important. 3 key points to be successful in such a treatment. If you didn't have the intention to place mini screws and you want to win back your case, you can do what I'm going to show you right now. First point is the precision in placing your tags. This is something that needs a little bit of learning curve, but I think that when we do things correctly, we learn very, very quickly. This precision is to place the mini screw as close as possible to the first molar roots, without touching the roots, of course. The class 3 elastic, as you can see here, will start the distalization of the lower arch. This is another case where you see the precision of the placement of the mini screws very close to the molars, with an angulation of 30 to 40 degrees to be in a larger space, in a wider space. Look at this panorama. This is another case, but you can see here in the beginning, my mini screws are very close to the first molars, and at the end of the treatment, after the distalization, we are very close to the second premolars. This is the distance or the amount of this distalization of the first molars. And what is nice in non-extraction cases is that very often we have a bodily movement because of the resistance. There are no spaces, no tipping, and the molars are moved bodily in a nice translation. So the second important point here is how you connect your mini screws to your arch, to your teeth, and in a case like that, we are going to connect very low at the level of the wire to induce what? To induce a clockwise rotation on the occlusion plane, on the upper occlusion plane, and close the bite and correct the torque. You can see here the moment that we are inducing with this loading and the forces and extrusion from and an intrusion of the molars, which will help also distalizing a little bit the molars. And the third key point for me here is that taking into consideration the torque prescription, the low torque, I'm using for the final mass retraction an undersized wire of 16 by 25 stainless steel to allow the incisors to upright easier with a lower force. And this is what will happen for this case. You can see here the final images and the tongue education. And look at the patient's profile. Imagine the impact of premolars extractions, but imagine also if we didn't have the ability to use our mini screws and to correct that case and to go back to the most aesthetic position possible for the patient, facially and dentally. The 3 steps: initial, after proclination, and after what we call the mini screw effect. I don't know if you have noticed in this case that during the treatment, in the middle of the treatment, I changed my braces in the lower to Q braces because I needed more interbracket distance and I needed to have a lower torque. So, I think also that this is important to remember when we start a case. When a case is failing, when the patient is not happy, he will not give you another opportunity to treat him. That's why our treatment planning, the thinking process I was talking about in the very beginning, is really, really important. and we very rarely have the opportunity to treat again the same patients. So 100% of the patients of that study have shown the same evolution with in the first time a proclination, a lack of control, more or less, of the lower incisors. Whatever is what you do, a copious use of coil springs, very light forces, but we have always the same effect. A proclination of the lower incisors when we have a severe or moderate crowding, and then after mini screws, we are using the same mechanics, 2 mini screws, close to the roots of the sixes, a direct connection, direct loading to the screws for the upper arch, and a distalization via class 3 elastics for the upper arch, for the lower arch. We can use lower screws also, but the goal here is to be as less invasive as possible. So this is after what I call the mini screw effect, and a total treatment time of 18 months. In only one phase, what we do, of course, normally, this is just for the clinical study we did in 2 phases, we can treat a case like that in 14 months or 15 months. So this is how I want to finish my cases. And my conclusion after this this study I have conducted is that we always have an unwanted proclination when we treat without extraction in cases of moderate or severe crowdings. And that's why today I place mini screws as soon as possible, and they are loaded sometimes with a very initial wire, the 014 here, with very light force, of course, of 10 or 15 grams maximum, just to maintain your anterior teeth, to avoid that initial proclination, and to see your patients come back into the office and tell you, I'm not happy, my teeth are flared now. Look at this case. This is really interesting. I showed that to my periodontist, and he was really amazed. The severe recessions with things like that, when you diagnose your case, you don't have to let the teeth go forward even by 1 millimeter. No expansion and no proclination in a case like that. And you can do that when you treat since the beginning with your orthodontic system and your tabs, and the tabs here were placed palatally. Look at the difference. No surgery, no flap, no graft, just by orthodontics. This 3D control of our roots, really, periodontists don't know about that, don't know we are able to do that. So you have to do it and show them. But if you don't have the control, of course you will worsen, you will aggravate the recessions, and then you will need your periodontist to help you with graft, etc. Now look at the anterior control, and only 13 months were necessary to treat this patient and to go from A to B. This patient was really a difficult personality. She was coming every 2 weeks, and she wanted to accelerate her treatment, and finally she was happy. So treating without extraction and yet improve the facial features. This is what I wanted to show you for this first topic. And treating also without extraction, but respect the perio, the bone and tissues. It's also what this approach is about, and I insist in 100% of your cases. So it's all about control. Now I was a little bit talking rapidly about 1 step or 2 steps. When do we need to remove our mini screw and place it in another site, in another place? Let me show you this example here. You see we have a full class 2, a full molar class 2 and canine class 2. In this case, we are first in the initial phase, placing a mini screw between 4 and 5 and distalize the molars. Everyone can see that? Here you have 1 coil spring compressed mesially to the molars, and you have a non-elastic connection between the mini screws to the activation hook, to the power arm. And a little bit later here, after having placed the molars in the class 1 occlusion relationship, we move our mini screw from medial to the 6s to the distalized molars, and then we can finish up the case with the en masse retraction and the total control of the anterior teeth. This is another example. Step 1, the mini screws between 4 and 5, and then between 5 and 6 and 7. In the second phase, we placed the mini screws almost vertical because we had enough bone thickness, but this is just a detail. Look at the step by step. We start from the full class 2 relationship, proclination of the upper incisors. We want to treat this case without extractions. We remove upper third molars. We start aligning and controlling our anterior teeth with the first mini screw placed between 4 and 5, and then we finish the case and go to a perfect class 1 molar in canine class 1 and a perfect control of the incisors. We cannot treat this case with extraction. It's impossible. We have to find a way. Class 2 elastics will push our incisors, our lower teeth, forward. And that's what I want, and I want to have. I want to have a nice profile at the end, and this comes by a control of the lower incisors and move the upper teeth without taking anchorage on the lower teeth. This is nice also to see, because when you are loading your upper arch against the mini screw, you have an intruding force on the posterior, and this will improve the smile arch and gives you a perfect exposure of the premolars and the molars at the end of the treatment. You have a simultaneous intrusion posteriorly that contribute to the correction of the class 2 relationship. So our case is treated in 2 phases when you have a big amount of proclination of our class 2 relationship. In lingual technique, when I'm placing the mini screws in the palatal surface, the palatal area, we most of the time need only 1 step, because that interradicular space is very wide. It's 5.3 millimeters, I think, 5.2 millimeters at the height of 8 millimeters from the dentinal margin. So 5.2 millimeters between the 5 and the 6 of the palatal versus 3.2 on the labial between 5 and 6. And we can go like that and correct a very severe proclination or pipe protrusion just by 2 mini screws placed in the palatal surface, and use our class 3 elastic the same way that we did with labial. We do that with lingual also at the same time. So look at the change here, without extraction, without IPR, just by using your mini screws and by controlling your case. Look at the change of the facial also profile. 12 months. 12 months because we are treating both arches simultaneously. We are not waiting to prepare the anchorage first and then, no. We start distalizing the upper and the lower arch at the same time in a linear way till the end of the treatment. And we notice here that the third molars were not removed because this patient was really very scared about surgery and extractions. So we distalized the third molar at the same time. It will be a little bit more difficult for the surgeon, perhaps, that's all. So you can tell me, why do you use 2 steps and you reposition the mini screws? Why not using your screws out of the roots all the time? Yes, I think that it's up to everyone. It's a personal choice. But I'm going to give you my choice, why I do that way. My choice is on the right. And in my case, in my practice, I'm more serene when this patient on the right leaves my office than the other one. But if I don't have any other choice, then I can try to do differently. So when I place my mini screws like that, the patient doesn't have any problem, and we can 3 or 4 or 5 months later put the mini screw in another place inside and finish our treatment. In a case like on the left side, we can have some impingement, some emergencies, and people don't like emergencies, so this is my last choice. That would be my last choice. And if I want to place them out of the roots, my first choice will be to go to the retromolar area. This way, when the movement, when the tooth movement are, don't require a lot of control of the torque, of the anterior torque, of the incisors, you can do it that way because you're going to lose torque, and the force will come from a very low position and will move the teeth and detorque the upper incisor, which can be very helpful in some cases, like this case. For example, a very severe proclination. And here we are finishing, after having distalized the lower arch, we distalize the upper arch against the mini screws placed behind the second molars. Look at the correction of the class 2. And in some cases, you might have this thickness when you look at your CBCT laterally to the molars. You can see here this huge thickness of the bone. In a case like that, I'm going to place them out of the roots also, because I have the place for that. And in this case, for example, I need to correct the proclination, the crowding without extraction. So for me, it's very easy to place the mini screws. As you see them here, did you see that? It's obvious for everyone. They are really vertical and parallel to the roots. And as I told you, you are distalizing and intruding at the same time and rotating your maxillary occlusal plan clockwise. And here I'm cutting the hook of the first molars, because the molar will go a little bit very close to the mini screw, and the hook would have been an obstacle for that. So that's why we look carefully every step, and then we remove that hook to let the molars move a little bit more distal. But already here, in 9 weeks, we have something like 3 millimeters of distalization of the upper molars and of the anterior teeth also. And we created enough room for the two incisors. Two incisors were missing. So in the mandible, it's a different story. In the mandible, the failure rate for interreticular spaces are a little bit higher. My personal failure rate in the mandible are 10%, which is really, really too much. So in the mandible, I think that this failure rate is due to the fact that we have less attached gingiva, narrower interreticular spaces, and we have also more occlusion forces on the screws, so we are losing them a little bit more often. So for the mandible, my first choice would be to be out of the root in that position. As my friend Chris called that, the Beckel shelf. And the failure rate here is just 2%, which is almost nothing. Okay, so this was really a little aside to explain how I do and what are my choices. And now I want to share with you an extraction case, because you can ask that question. Do you place these screws? Do you use them also for extraction cases? So the extraction decision is not the most important thing in treatments like that, but the mechanics and I would say the goals also. Because for patients like this, I think that many orthodontists will just say, I will extract upper and lower fours and finish up my case, and the patient would be improved and would be happy. But I wanted more for her. I wanted more because when I listened to her once and twice, she was really, really in trouble with her gummy smile. Look at the huge bite protrusion. So, 9 degrees of NB, lower incisor is 12 millimeters, 40 degrees, the skeletal bite protrusion and dentoalveolar bite protrusion. So, what I'm going to do here is to use my mini screws both to provide anchorage for the en masse retraction after extraction of the premolars, but also to intrude the upper arch to have an orthodontic impaction at the same time. Let me show you this. The intrusion of the maxilla posteriorly and anteriorly will reduce the vertical dimension of the face, will induce a counterclockwise rotation of the mandible, and will correct the gummy smile at the same time. This is the way we do that. We are loading the posterior screws and the anterior screws at the same time, and then we are retracting or repositioning our incisors. As you can see here, 1/3 molar was missing here, with one root was remaining, and this third molar were extruded. So we decided to extract the third molars also to make the treatment more simple and more rapid for this adult patient, and to also facilitate the orthodontic impaction. So extraction of upper and lower 4 and the 3 remaining third molars. This is a little bit the mechanic we have used in a case like this. And we wonder really if the mini screws will be good enough, but they are. We are using an intrusion splint to intrude the whole maxilla. And as we are in edgewise, the wire is flexible. We are using also anterior screws to control the upper incisors and control the torque during the unmasked retraction. And for the lower arch, we didn't need any reinforcement for the anchorage. So here, this occlusal pressure on the splint is increasing the occlusal forces and is helping for that intrusion, of course. And we have to modulate our anterior force to maintain the occlusion plan a little bit more or less, to have really a parallel intrusion, a parallel impaction. 1 millimeter a month or 0.75 millimeter a month of intrusion. You see here the design of the intrusion splint. I'm not using that all the time, but in this case that was a good option for me. And 5 months later we were able to remove the splint after having impacted, intruded the whole maxilla while closing the space. This is a funny slide because I was showing how we can have fun with the mechanic. You can be creative. You can be creative, all of them. Here I'm still maintaining or intruding the upper incisors, and at the same time I want to extrude a little bit the upper canine. So I use class 2 elastics. And in order not to have any side effect on the lower arch, I'm using class 3 elastics supported by the mini screws. So the patient with that for 1 month only, but this is how you can really play with that and how you can be efficient from the beginning to the end of the treatment. You have the control. This is 18 months in treatment, and this is the final. Just 19 months were enough to treat a complex case like that. But most important for me is to go behind, is go really beyond what we are used to do, but in a simple to use way, and the patient accepts that very, very well, and you can imagine the happiness of this patient because she couldn't imagine her face is going to change like that. Look at the amount of intrusion, bone intrusion and teeth intrusion also. I show here that I was obliged to reposition 1 mini screw a little bit more gingival higher and to respect that biological space. Look at the optimal facial aesthetic. A conventional treatment just with extractions would not have been enough to achieve such an outcome. Look at the profile, the chin projection, and the chin, the movement forward of the chin, which is for me what I really like most, to see my patients very happy. Look at the movement of the mandible, the counterclockwise rotation. The case changed totally. It's no longer a high angle case, but and the amount of intrusion here is really, really important but accurate. 3 degrees of reduction of the mandibular angle. And I can show, it's not 1 or 2 cases, I can show tens of cases like that, or 100 cases which with the same evolution. This case is just the most recent one, and I'm sharing it for the very first time here. I'm happy for that. And 9 degrees A and B, we move to 6, and the lower incisor. So the repositioning is really optimal, and the aesthetic is optimal because of the reduction of the vertical dimension. And there is no risk, of course, in cases like that, because the soft tissue changes are not as important as the skeletal and dental alveolar changes, so we In BI hypertrophic patients, we don't have a risk of a dished-in profile, as you can see in this very nice article in the Angle Orthognathics. So we really, as Dr. Damon said yesterday, we changed people's lives, and this patient, I cannot tell you how happy she was after her treatment. Only 19 months. This is another case. Look at the counterclockwise rotation of the mandible. So this protocol was a little bit more invasive, but perhaps with 4 mini screws, but in general we use in most of the cases 2 mini screws. So what about the stability of these corrections? In the literature you have many articles. I have selected some of them, but the main idea is those treatments are stable, and those treatments are as efficient as a surgical impaction. So no problem, you can treat your patient this way, and you have many articles talking about that. And in this systematic review, about 9 cases treated with tags of open bites, the most important thing is to have a good retention protocol in the first year of treatment, and to reinforce the muscles and ask the patient to have some education and educate the tongue. But the retention protocol is very important in the first year, because 80% of the re-extrusion of the intruded molars happens during the first year after the active treatment. We have conducted a clinical study at the University of Bordeaux in France, and we have also established that in all of the cases we can observe a counterclockwise rotation of the mandible and a decrease of the vertical dimension in high angle patients. So I'm going to go crescendo with more complex cases now, and I want you to look carefully at the coming cases, because that will really help you to imagine your treatment plans. And the good news is that complicated cases, it doesn't mean complex protocols. Let's see a case like this. This is a 43 years old patient who had a prior treatment with 4 extractions, as you can see for her with her profile, upper and lower 4. I was treating her daughter, and one day she came to me and she told me, of course, nothing is possible for me now, it's too late. I told her, no, not really, we can still have an idea and have a look on your teeth. So this is her malocclusion. We have almost full class 2 on the right side, if you can call that a class 1 on the left side. But her main complaint was that gummy smile. And gummy smile in a short face is not very often that we can see that. So how to treat a case like that? It's really not easy when you have to deal with situations which are not very. So I don't think aligners can do that. This is what I have done for this case. Upper and lower Damon system. And there are 2 mechanical considerations that have been very important in this case. The torque prescription, first of all, and you will see a little bit later the bite turbos. Here I placed the standard torque. I think that many here would go for a super torque, because we need really to induce a positive torque on the upper incisor. But I didn't do that for 2 reasons. Because, first of all, the initial position of the upper incisors was so negative that when you place a wire, rectangular wire, you're going to have very high torque already with a standard torque. And the other reason is that the mini screws I'll be using, and I know my protocol already, will also induce a positive torque. So I didn't want to add this to this, so I decided to have a standard torque. And there is a little bit a third reason that I can say: when you have a clear bracket, you better not have a very active torque also. Even with copper night tie wires, they can break quite easily. In the lower, we have a standard torque, of course, because we have clear brackets. And the second important mechanical tip here is where to place the bite turbos. Would you place the bite turbos on the incisors here? Of course not, because if we do so, we will aggravate the negative torque. So we have to find another way where to place it to correct this deep bind and to extrude the lower buccal segments. You can see in this slide how we have been dealing with this case. 2 upper mini screws, anterior mini screws between 2 and 3. And we are gradually intruding and torquing our incisors. I say torquing on purpose. It's not a proclination. And this is really very important. We'll come back to that a little bit in a moment. And for the class 2, we are adding an anterior mini screw on the lower, and we are loading that mini screw in order to bring our buccal segment on the right forward and to correct the distal tipping and the class 2. The midlines are corrected. And I insist on how easy it is, really, to do that. It's compatible with the normal practice. So I have placed the incisor at the optimal height to have a nice smile, to give this patient the smile she was dreaming of. 20 months in treatment. Let me show you the step by step also from the lateral views. This is where we start. The bike turbos were placed posteriorly, alternatively on the right and on the left to allow the other part, the other side to extrude, and then we change them to the other side. Loading of the anterior screws, and here the slide is very important. We are connecting our screws with a non-elastic connection and using class 2 elastics with 0 negative effect on the upper incisors. So they are maintained at the same height, and then we are using our class 2 elastics to bring the lower teeth, the lower buccal segments up and forward and correct our class 2. And as the class 2 was much more important on the right side, we added that mini screw between 2 and 3, and we have able to bring the teeth forward. I had to debond her after 20 months because she was leaving back to Switzerland. And she told me that the first thing she would do is to go to her first orthodontist and to show him her teeth, because she had been going to that orthodontist many times and asking for a retreatment, and he always said, no, you are very good, very well like that. It's not possible to retreat you. So this is where we finished. And you can notice something very important here. We have no bone on the buccal surface of the upper incisors. If we are not careful with that, if we start leveling and intruding, we are going to eliminate or destroy all the remaining bone, the little bone we have. Look at the roots here. This is the initial image. The conventional leveling will push the crowns labially and will really disappear all the cortical bone. So what we did here is to maintain our incisors, remember, with the mini screws and the class 2 elastics to avoid a lot of proclination, to maintain them exactly at the right level, but without having any side effect on extruding the incisor because they are maintained on the screws. And like that, we are able to replace the roots inside the bone on floor. So this is also what the thinking process, what we wanted, we have been able to achieve it. We wanted to place the root in the bone and not just to intrude or level. That's why I say goal-oriented biomechanics. Look at the change here. 1 year later, the patient came back from Switzerland and we did this cone beam, CT cone beam, and we see that we have now bone here in labially to the incisors, where in the beginning we were completely out of the bone. And of course, on the lateral, on the buccal segments, we have enough bone on the molars level. So I'm talking about fewer unwanted forces and moments and more wanted and forced moments, because you master the mechanics. It's not the mechanics that is limiting us. We are deciding. So, look at her smile. She's really happy, and she didn't expect such a change, and I didn't. Well, I worked hard, not like an insignia, but I was sleeping well because I knew I'm going to place the teeth exactly where I wanted them to go. This case is really a learning case. Look at this case carefully, because I was showing this treatment a couple of months ago in Paris, and the orthodontist who sent me this patient was sitting there, the first row. She was looking at me, and it was too late to change anything. She sent me that patient. I was really spending a difficult moment, but then I decided to say what I had to say. He had been in treatment for 3 years when I first saw him. Her orthodontist told me, it's almost finished, you just have to debond 1 or 2 appointments maximum. So I said, of course, we will do that for free, we will not charge you, we are friends. And as you can see, the case initially is not a difficult case. A little bit of crowding is a class 1. Just one thing, he had 2 missing lower second premolars. That's the only big issue in a case like that. We have all heard about protracting the posterior teeth with mini screws. Yes. But we didn't insist enough on when to do that and when not to do it. So, in this case, this orthodontist didn't make the right choice, in my opinion. And she decided to bring the lower molars forward and to close the space. Perhaps the parents have insisted for that, but we need to say no when it's not a good option. They used labial mini screws and lingual mini screws. And another mini screw had been added at the top. I still don't know why. Why the screw had been put here. And this is the day I received the patient in my practice. He has the lower second molar is not protracted yet, but we can see some problems here. The arch form is not right, and the occlusion is not good at all with the scissor bite on the left side. So what to do in a case like that? And what is really, really difficult for this patient is to have this gummy smile, the iatrogenic gummy smile. He didn't have that at the beginning. He was pretty nice looking and have a good balance of his face. Look at the distant profile, retroclined upper and lower incisors, and these extruded upper incisors with a gummy smile. So I think that my conclusion is that it's not because we can do it, that we have to do it, to protract the molars and to close the spaces, or we should choose a more efficient mechanic. I'm showing here that possibly the effect of that palatal mini screw was the reason of this extrusion. It has maintained a fixed point around that point. The premaxilla and the maxilla has rotated during the growth, the remaining growth of the patient. Look at the profile. So now we need to correct to fix that. And I announced to the patients 12 months of treatment. And this slide was really very embarrassing for me because I was saying that all the problems, all what that keeps doctors from finishing well are here in this case. The bracket position was not good, the torque control, the poor diagnosis and treatment plan, the treatment option was not good. So what I did here, I will show you very rapidly. This is the day I received the patient, and here when I reposition, when I change completely the appliance, new bracket position and a new torque proscription. Did you notice that we have a super low torque here on the incisors? That was also understandable. Why? The height of the premolars of the canine is not good at all. So all that we have to be really careful. But 3 years later, it created this kind of problems. So the new bracket position, new torque prescription, we have a positive torque now, and the 2 mini screws protocol in the approach that will help me to do everything. I'm going to intrude my upper incisors. I'm going to use them also to protract my lower arch, move it medially because I want to create more volume to protract my upper and lower arch. This is only 4 months of treatment. Look at the forces here. We intrude, we protract, and we torque the upper incisors at the same time. And this is 12 months. We are very close to the end of the treatment. Here, the connection to the mini screws is non-elastic because we have finished, we have placed our incisors at the right position and the right torque, the right height. Now we are just finishing the protraction or the proclination of the lower arch with class 2 elastics. And this is the day of debonding. The patient was absolutely, couldn't stand his braces anymore, any longer. So we decided to finish protracting the lower molar and to place a retainer, remover and fixed retainer. And we have the ability to use our mini screws, even though we don't have upper brackets, but just a removable retainer here will maintain my upper arch. And look at the difference for the upper and lower arch form. Remember, he had a scissor bite. Look at the amount of intrusion here. And the change in the smile of the patient. And what's really good is that what I said at the beginning, when you start the case, you know you are going to go there. Because you know you have the control, a 3D control of every single movement. And if it happens that all of us have a failure, we can win back a case when we use the right mechanic, when we have to finish the treatment if we have not done well initially. And when I talk about precision, the next case is really a case that illustrates that precision that we can have in our hands. This patient also was really unhappy with her treatment outcome. She's a doctor, she's specializing, and she had been treated in braces for 3 years. And one day she decided to take another treatment, and she came to visit my office. And the problem here, as you can see, is that she has a palatal cleft and a midline shift with a tipping of the upper incisors and, of course, of the lower incisors. You will see that in a moment. So this scant is something that needs a lot of precision to be corrected, to be treated in a short time and in a linear way from the beginning to the end. So that's why we need to have a protocol that we know that we can master. So this is the day we are bracing this patient, and you see the cant of the lower and the upper arch, because what happens in the upper had consequences in the lower arch. And we are going to do 2 or 3 phases here. The first phase is to extrude the left patient's side in the upper arch. We need here to move our smile line occlusally on the left, and we need to intrude on the right. You follow me? And we need to do the same thing in the lower. We need to extrude on the right. So it's opposite. So this is what I'm going to do here. We start with the extrusion of the upper left. We notice some root resorption, probably due to the surgery, to the bone graft. And this unilateral extrusion is going to be achieved this way. We can find another way. Everyone has his personal choices. So here we place the mini screw and an auxiliary, an extruded auxiliary that will bring my left half of the upper arch down, and this is when we activate it, okay? Then, for the phase 2 here, what we are going to do is to place, in this case, outside of the roots, a mini screw, an infrazygomatic press mini screw, ICC, that will allow me to rotate the upper arch to the right and distalize my molars and bring my midline to the facial midline. You can see here the position of the screw. On the top of the roots, And the way we are loading here to start while extruding, we are distalizing on the other side. This is the push-pull mechanics that we are using. And every cut is really smoothly going, really easy. Nothing difficult, nothing. And from one appointment to the other, you are progressing or getting better, and the patient arrives to the office, she's really happy, she's smiling, she's really thankful. So you can see here the two faces together and how we are now adding an anterior mini screw on the upper to help intruding and fixing our smile line totally with a lot of accuracy, with a complete accuracy. And then we use the same mini screw to extrude the lower right and bring the teeth together and really have a very nice correction. All this we have seen took 12 months, nothing more. We didn't lose any week here in this treatment, and the correction of the tipping of the incisors are two problems, and the distal movements and the midline correction. Voilà. 10 months only were enough to go from A to B, and this is exactly what I want to share with you, how you can master your cases from the beginning to the end while respecting and following your treatment goals. So here, there's something also that you should be careful about, is a mechanical tip here. When I start with the distalization, as you can see, I have a little bit long or medium power arm on the arch. And then when I needed more rotation of the smile line around the center of resistance, I'm shortening the activation hook to have a more important moment and rotate and bring really my smile line to the right position, to the correct position. We can see that in this illustration. When we go at the level of the wire, the moment, because the distance to the center resistance is bigger, the moment is much more important and will bring and use this movement and this rotation around the center of resistance that is between the two incisors at a height of approximately 8 millimeters from the gingival margin of the bone crest. So this is what you did exactly. And finally, I go now to the left side. I don't need any more extrusion of the smile line on the left. I'm using the same screw to protract my canine premolar and reopen space between 6 and 4 for an implant. So this is the way you can maximize your control and the benefit of your mechanics in a short time, short treatment time. You see here how we start and how the patient is. So this treatment is still ongoing, but I'm sure in 2 or 3 months we'll be able to debond her. And remember, she had been treated for 3 years before. So she can compare, you can really be sure that she will all her life be thankful to what you did for her. So I like this sentence. This is how we can make difficult cases very easy and at the same time achieve optimal results and optimal aesthetics. Because the patient is looking at his smile and his aesthetic and he wants something nice. The arch form, of course. We are sharing many things with friends and colleagues in office programs that we are holding in our offices twice a year, sometimes 3 times a year. And if you come, it's very, very far from here, someday, by then you are more than welcome. So, what's that? So I'm going to be quicker for the last topic, ectopic teeth and how to make them easier for the patient, how to make them smarter also. You know, this topic, I can speak about that for hours, but the thing I wanted to say is that I asked that question to many friends on social media, and I have the results. 90% of the orthodontists don't like treating cases with impacted teeth. It's not very nice because it's painful, and sometimes we have some bad surprises. So how to make these treatments easier? Look at this case for you. For example, 2 palatally impacted canines. This patient was treated in lingual, and a colleague sent me this picture to ask me for a solution. TADs had been placed but lost. It's very important to place your TADs correctly. And if you lose them, don't continue your treatment without TADs if TADs are necessary, or then you change your treatment plan. So they continue on loading the upper arch on the teeth, and look what happened. An extrusion of the molars, an open bite, and the case is now surgical. So I'm going to show you just 2 or 3 examples of what I'm doing in my practice every day. This is, for example, a very easy case. I thought an easy case. It's an ectopic canine here, and the patient is 20 years old. She's last looking, and my mini screw here will help me to shorten the treatment time while the patient is having a full appliance and is braced on all the teeth. So I'm going to have a partial appliance here, and that's what the TAD is used for in this case, but also to have more control. So this is the panoramic view, and this is where we start. We are placing just 3 or 4 braces, but we just need 3 braces here, sometimes less. And we are now creating an anchor unit. I mean, we are connecting our mini screw and directly to 1 or 2 teeth, and use that anchor unit to move my canine the first time. So this is what we do. After placing the screw, we have an impression. We place the same kind of mini screw in the impression. We create a positive model, and then we prepare an auxiliary that will connect my mini screw very passively to the teeth I want to use. And once we did that, we can again sleep very well, because we have a very solid anchor unit that will help me bring my canine the first time of treatment, in the first step, labially and out of the occlusion. These are some progression phases with this case, so it's really easy to do that, and the patient is happy because she doesn't have braces everywhere. She couldn't afford a clear brace or a lingual appliance, so this is a good option to do it more friendly. So this auxiliary brought our canine labially and out of the occlusion of the lower teeth, and now we can move to a full appliance. So these are some views of the same faces. You see here how we are connecting our canine to distalize it a little bit. The auxiliary was moving the teeth horizontally and labially, and then with this distal fraction we are distalizing and moving labially our canine. When the patient can smile, can be very comfortable. And once we arrive here, we can remove the shell, and then we can bring my canine, extrude it a little bit, have some laser gingivoplasty of force, and moving the case with a full appliance. 7 months in treatment. Then when we start with a full appliance, we have already saved 6 months with a partial, with just 2 or 3 braces. And as you can notice here, we are not using the brackets of the canine of the 6th and the 5th here, because they are connected to the mini screw, not to induce any side effect. This is important to notice. And then we can disconnect our mini screw and go for a conventional treatment. Now the case becomes easy, and we are going to move very much faster. We level the 6 and the 5. We finish up. This is the extrusion auxiliary and the bonding of the canine. And 11 months of treatment progress with the full appliance, plus 6 months with just 2 or 3 braces on the left side. We start leveling at 11 months the lower arch to produce this nice sound functional occlusion, and finish by using the same mini screw for a class 3 elastic. The total full bonding bracing time is 10 months here. Look at the position of the screw. We are in a class 1 relationship, so no need to move or reposition our screw. Now a little bit more difficult. Now there are cases that we can perhaps sometimes treat without mini screws, but not to the same outcome, not with the same facility. And there are cases that you can never treat without threads. If you don't have them in your office, it's a little bit more complicated. So in a case like that, we have to use 2 mini screws, and I will show you why I needed them and why it was impossible to treat without. We have this impaction of 1 second premolar, 1 first molar, 1 second molar. So we decided we extracted the first temporary molar, and we started by extruding or placing our second premolar, which was really horizontal. It was in a horizontal position, and look at the midline shift here. And we decided to extract 1 premolar on the right side to correct the midline and to keep our third molar in place because the patient was still young. So this is why I needed this mini screw here on the right side, because here we are already in a full class 2 relationship, and any anchorage loss will not allow me to reach a full class 1, canine class 1, or to use class 2 elastics, which was not exactly what I wanted. So this is a maximum anchorage, an absolute anchorage to finish. And the mini screw on the left, on the lower, allowed me to bring my second premolar, first of all, to its position, then the second molar. Look here, all the faces. And if I didn't have this mini screws, I couldn't extrude my premolars and molars, all that using only my anterior teeth in the upper jaw. It was impossible. So look here at the final occlusion, 24 months. That's why most orthodontists don't like to treat impacted teeth. And this is from the frontal view with the midline correction of the lower and of the upper. So I was really here focusing on the main steps of this case, and what really surprised me, because we look at the bone loss here when we remove this first molar and bring the second and third molars here, so we have 2 molars, and after bringing my molars, we have again enough bone. So this is what we call it natural destruction using the teeth movement. So as I said, 2 mini screws have been crucial here. This one to finalize the class 1 relationship, and this one to bring the second premolar and the molars into a good relationship, to protract them and extrude them, just with intermaxillary elastics. We have been able, even with this premolar extraction, to control our anterior teeth and to maintain enough volume for the profile and to give this patient a full result in a case which was really, really difficult. This case also is amazing because our lateral incisor here is upside down. You can see it. So how to deal with a case like that? We have some other complexities in this case. It's a class 3. We want to treat it without extraction in the upper arch. So we need to create room for the lateral incisor, and then we will use 1 mini screw in that room that we have created to rotate our incisor without having any problem with anchorage, just by using our mini screw. You see the incisor made a rotation of 180 degrees. And one friend asked me the other day, can you bring 1 canine from the upper to the lower? I said, perhaps I will try to do that. Now the incisor is vertically in the correct position. Now we can remove our mini screw and go for a good alignment with our braces. Yes. So, I still have 15 minutes. 10. Okay. That was the progression or the... So now to summarize, I have 10 minutes for that. I want to insist on 2 or 3 messages. We have seen how to extract without, how to treat without extractions and achieve a nice profile and respect the period. We have seen how to deal with very complex cases in a very easy to use way. And how also to make impacted canine or teeth treatment easier. I have 3 messages. I think that first of all our treatment outcomes are based on how we master our mechanic, our orthodontic system. If you are using the Damon system, all of the parameters that allow you to have a nice finish, very optimal finishing results, the bracket placement, the progression between wires, the finishing, what Stuart Frost said yesterday, all that is really, really important. That will add something else. And believe it or not, each time I can treat my cases without that, I'm really happy to make things easier for myself, first of all, and for my patient. In a case like this, I think that mini screws or that would be just over-treatment. It's like, said John Lynn, I like this image, catching butterflies with elephants. Just by your orthodontic system, a good torque prescription, and a good control. And by the way, this case is published in the e-mag, the Ormco mag, has been treated in 5 appointments because my patient lives in South Africa and he comes to my office in December, August, twice a year, that's all. So we maintained our 014 wires for 9 months or 10 months. And now I have a patient in Washington, D.C. So this is how I want to finish my cases. This is also an adult patient, a very famous sports guy, and we finished the case in 12 months. We don't need anything more than our orthodontic system and a good control with our braces. But at the difference perhaps of some other orthodontists, each time I need mini screws to have a better treatment outcome or to overcome some difficulties that would push me to extract teeth or, I don't know, to go for an option that I don't like, I'm always ready. I'm always ready to use mini screws for many reasons. For example, to treat more severe proclinations and crowded cases with a very nice improvement, as you can see here, of the perio and of the facial aesthetics without extraction. So treat more severe procline and crowded cases without extractions. Look at the change of the smile and of the profile. I can also use that to push the limits of surgery. This patient didn't want surgery for her class 3. And what I like when you treat my class 3 cases is to have a perfect control on my lower incisors, the height of the lower incisors and the torque. It's really very, very good, very better option to rotate clockwise or counterclockwise your occlusion plan. So when I treat my class 3, I distalize my lower arch, but I maintain my incisors in the symphysis, in the cortical, in the bone, in the medullary bone, and this torque control, we can do it when we use our power arms. This is the key. You place your power arms and you modulate your moments and your forces, and you will distalize and torque at the same time. And of course, use the right torque prescription. And look at the bone here, no recession, have a good labial plate. So cases like that really are treated very often in my practice. But don't make me say what I didn't say. Some patients want to go to surgery and we ask them to go to surgery also. This is another case we are treating, and very easily we are correcting class 3, and at the same time we maintain our lower excision. Another challenge we have is to treat those high-angle patients class 2 with a very severely retruded chin, and to treat them with a really optimal change in their face. Look here how far we are able to intrude our posterior, our buccal segments, just with the same mechanic. We didn't have to intrude them in a separate step. Just by achieving our en masse retraction against the mini screws, we are intruding at the same time the upper and the lower, the front teeth and the buccal and the posterior teeth, because the mini screw is placed exactly at the center of resistance of the upper arch. This is the amount of intrusion we achieve while treating the patient almost in a classic way. This is a case that had been treated more than 10 years ago with an amazing counterclockwise rotation of the mandible just by 2 mini screws. Here we are using 4 mini screws, but look at the change. We had this patient after her first treatment. She had been treated without extraction. That was not a good option. Look at the gummy smile, the cant of the smile line. Everything had been treated the way we wanted it to be treated. Look at the cant of the smile line. This intrusion was different from the left side to the right side. And when we finished our case in 20 months, and this patient also is living in London, and she doesn't come very often to my office, every 3 months. We can do that also in adult patients, inducing this counterclockwise rotation of the mandible. Why? How we can do that? We can do that by the slight intrusion of the molars. Just 1 millimeter of intrusion can produce up to 3 to 4 millimeters of projection of the chin, and will change completely the game in an adult case like this. Look at the face. All we did here is to extract 2 premolars in the upper and to intrude the posterior teeth in the upper jaw. So this is what I wanted to say, that we can go really beyond what we might do if we don't imagine the use of TADs in our cases. So think about it, and once you have decided they will be very helpful, then you can do it and imagine your mechanical protocol. I was insisting on the thinking process in the beginning. The thinking process is to know, first of all, what you want. It's like a dream, you know, you have for the patient. It's your treatment dream. You know, in the companies now, they talk about a business dream before even talking about the business plan. So our treatment dream is what we want, the vision we have for our patient. And then you ask yourself what's possible to do, including these movements that have been made possible with the use of TADs. What are the new limits? And then your treatment plan, and that's your biomechanics, what you will be really doing, how to achieve it. This case I will be starting next week when I go back to my practice. I just wanted to show you this case like that, just this photo, because I already have a dream for this case. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to use that on the anterior and on the posterior also, because this patient wants really to improve her gummy smile and her protrusion. And I hope I will show you this case next time. So this is what I conclude. I wanted to tell you that I have a vision for this patient. I know what I'm going to do and how I'm going to achieve it. To his vision and control. And you can also add your creativity. And a last idea I wanted to share with you. I think that today, nowadays, orthodontists are attracted more and more to ready-to-use treatment options, to a little bit easy-to-use things. And my biggest fear is that one day orthodontists will lose their know-how, this thinking part that is really, really important for all of us. So I just want to ask you to be more healthcare practitioners. And what said one day Picasso, that an artist becomes a genius only if he knows and respects before the essential basic rules of his art. And for us orthodontists, the biomechanic is the most important thing to know and to respect, to become also a genius, and I hope that we will have very nice treatments, all of you. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.